good morning. Right off the rip, guys, I'm gonna tell you it's probably gonna be a short one this morning. I gotta get out the door and go do a piece of work this morning. But I want to talk a little bit about the big guy going to Ukraine. I mean, the real thing that irks me about this is our involvement in the Ukraine is suspicious at best and psychotic at the most probable. Somewhere in the middle of those two lies the truth of the matter, and I think it's just naked corruption. So we talked about it on this show. You all saw news clips about it. None of those clips, by the way, from major outlets about the East Palestine train derailment problem last week. And, you know, we were talking about this around the dinner table night before last with Mom and Dad, and it's kind of funny. Like, we had this massive train derailment, and one of the first like news flash pieces of information that was run out in relation to it was, oh yeah, well, you know, this isn't such a big deal. There's 3 or 4 of these derailments like this every day. Like, I'm sorry. There's come again, right? You know, to quote Bricktop, in the quiet words of Virgin Mary, come again. So we start hearing about that, and it's, you know, like my wife cracked the joke. Half the country just learned today that we still have trains, and you know, there's more than a little comedy in that, but it's kind of the case. You know, people just aren't really plugged into to what's going on there. But to learn that, you know, 3, 4, 5 derailments like that a day. Okay, I want to take you back a little bit. Remember when Donald Trump said, "Let's build a wall"? And one of the big criticisms was, what a gross waste of $17 million. Oh my God. We already have problems with our spending, right? We're talking about right at the beginning of the Trump administration. Yeah. So at the beginning of the Trump administration, our national debt was just over $20 trillion. Or where are we now? We're at 31 trillion now, so 31, 35. At the beginning of the Trump administration, the national debt was right around 20 trillion, I think is where we were. An amount which was accumulated almost entirely, 50% of it was accumulated over the preceding 8 years. So when Obama took office, the national debt was right around 8 trillion. And he nearly tripled it before he left office. There's a piece of data running around right now where the lefties are screaming, "Oh, you don't know shit about fiscal responsibility." 25% of the total national debt was accrued under Donald Trump. Okay. Apparently you don't know how numbers work. 2/3 of the national debt prior to Trump was accumulated by Barack Obama. When Trump took office, the national budget had been replaced almost entirely with the National Debt Service, the amount that the U.S. had to pay just on the interest of the excruciating debt that was accumulated by Barack Obama with Joe Biden as his vice president. At that time, we had the actual event where Joe Biden went to the Ukraine and on camera before an amused and laughing audience extorted a foreign national government in order to force them to conduct a specific in order to prevent them from conducting a specific investigation that would have had, in theory at least, negative consequences for his son, and by extension, as we've learned from the laptop, the Biden criminal enterprise writ large. Now, in the midst of this crisis where the train has derailed and we see the giant plume and we're seeing the news about that, Joe Biden makes surprise visit to Ukraine nearly 1 year after Russia's invasion. Nearly 1 year after Russia's invasion. Now I want you to think back to a year ago. Gas was, right around $4 a gallon. National average was like $3.80, $3.75, $3.80 something. And just a few months after that, we were being told, oh, it's Putin's price hike. Gas is going up because of the conflict in Ukraine. I'm sorry. If the increased gas prices and inflation are entirely, which is what we've been told, the fault, the responsibility, the result of Putin's invasion of Ukraine, then how is it that they preceded that invasion? Okay, you'll constantly hear sophists reiterate the statement because somebody told them this in college. Well, correlation doesn't equal causation. No, it doesn't. But you're using that wrong. It is not. When they say it, what they mean is correlation excludes causation, and that is not true. Correlation does not guarantee causation, but it by no means excludes it. However, prior occurrence does exclude causation. Okay? It can be true that that Putin invading Ukraine had an effect on the global economy. In fact, it certainly is true. But you've been asked to believe that it was the only factor, which is absolutely false. And we know that. We know that easily by the prior occurrence of the effect to the stated cause. Effect cannot precede cause. This isn't complicated. Right? Yes, you have to break some eggs to make an omelet. But that in no way means that once the omelet is in the pan, you have a requirement to break more eggs. Okay? The omelet having been cooked does not mean that other eggs must be broken. Effect cannot precede cause. It's not complicated. Speaking of effects and causes. So, now we're getting a little more information on the fallout of the train derailment, the big one. And like they've informed all of us now 3 or 4 of these a day. And as we saw last week, right after the East Palestine, Ohio incident, there was another one in Arizona somewhere and another one in Pennsylvania, both of which involved hazardous chemicals, if I understand the reporting correctly. I may be wrong on that. It may only be the one in Arizona, but the one in Arizona also resulted in an emergency evacuation of the immediate area. But we're getting this news now. The chemical plume of butyl acrylate from the February 3rd East Palestine, Ohio train derailment is believed to hit Huntington sometime tomorrow, according to a press release from Governor Mike DeWine's office. As of Thursday, West Virginia and American Water says there are no drinking water advisories in the Huntington area. DeWine says the plume of butyl acrylate in the Ohio River is near Gallipolis in Gallia County, which is about 225 miles southwest of the East Palestine train derailment. We've seen some interesting stuff from J.D. Vance, for example. He went down to the site where it was an occurrence, and
I'm here at Leslie Run.
He gave us this video.
Dead worms and dead fish all throughout this water. So, something I just discovered is that if you scrape the creek bed, it's like chemical is coming out of the ground. Can you come here and let me just show this to people. I don't know if you're going to see this in the camera, but watch this. Just see that chemical pop out of the creek.
Yeah, you can see it very clearly on camera.
And the fact that we have not cleaned up the train crash, the fact that these chemicals are still seeping in the ground is an insult to the people who live in East Palestine. Do not forget these people. We've got to keep applying pressure. That's how we're going to fix this problem. Thank you.
Now, okay, so I've spent a lot of time over the last year and change with a gentleman named George Kelichek. You'll see him pop up in here every now and then. He's the head of a couple of different organizations, including the Eye of the Taxpayer organization and the Big Haynes Watershed Protection. George, I wish you were here because I can't remember the exact name of the organization, but he's got a nonprofit set up to work on legislative concerns related to the Big Haynes Watershed, which is where we locally in Rockdale County and a few surrounding counties get our potable drinking water. And there are some huge problems with that. And so related, J.D. Vance just said, I can't believe we haven't cleaned this mess up. One of the issues that I've learned way more than I ever wanted or expected to, related to a watershed situation. Our watershed here is badly restricted, right? We went from a feeding waterway, a river with, that was 100 feet across and 10 feet deep, feeding into our reservoir, to, as a result of silt running, uncontrolled and running into that waterway and filling it up and plugging it up, and then the silt is a super effective fertilizer. Plants grow well in it, and then they fall into the waterway and further escalate the problem. We went from this river that's 100 feet wide and 10 feet deep to literally a 1 foot wide by 8-inch deep inlet that is the only source of flowing water into the county. And for that reason, more than 80% of the water that we use in this county now is essentially treated wastewater, which is horrifying. But what it takes to clean that up is mind-blowing. You can't just go in there with heavy equipment like a crane and a dump truck and scoop the silt out. Because what happens then is you stir up the silt, and all this trash and tainted water that's in it, right, gets stirred up in the water and moves down a ways. It's even worse when you're talking about chemicals. What we just saw here, the chemicals in this water are more dense than the water that they're traveling in. So they don't just settle on the dirt below the water. They don't just settle on the waterbed, but they get absorbed into that material. So if you come in and just try to scoop it out, then you're just re-releasing that water that chemical into the water. The longer that the government waits to deal with this problem, the further that the further that chemical plume gets to travel, the larger the space that has to be cleaned up. I'm sorry, I'm reading a comment now from Stryker. I work at an EPA Superfund site with tainted water. Look up Stringfellow acid pits. And he says, yep, and that's it. That's exactly, Sean. It's an extremely expensive process where you have to pump the water and soil out, filter it, process it, then extract the water to be put back. You can't just dig it out. That ruins everything. And I honestly have a functional theoretical understanding of it, but I do not have the vocabulary to describe the science behind how it kind of breaks down. But he's absolutely right. It's not just a matter of getting it done. It has to get done sooner rather than later, and the longer they take to get it done, the more expensive it's going to be, and the more damage it will cause, rather. Stryker says will take 700 years to clean up. My friend in the oil biz says fracking tech could clean it in 5 years. That's interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. But I'm actually going to have to go ahead and put a pin in it there. It's already 7:50. And normally I'd go the full half hour, but I got to get out the door, like I said. So thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.